Thanks so much, and good evening, everyone. All right, so today I'm going to go over a little bit of a different talk than I would normally give, and I'm actually going to go through a bit of a history of TritonWear, and this title, From GoPro's to Leading the Industry, will make a bit more sense in a minute. So first, a little bit overall about what TritonWear actually is. So at TritonWear, we're really trying to take the guesswork out of improving for athletes, and we do this through three core pillars, is what we call them. First, by enabling smart skill development, so by providing industry-leading accuracy from our wearable devices and analyzing athletes over time to show them exactly what they're doing well, what they're doing poorly, and really where they should focus to make the biggest performance gains. And then our next big piece is around biomechanical analysis, where we combine video with sensor data to show them really what they're doing well again and what they're doing poorly, but at a much higher resolution. And then finally around injury prevention, where we track training load and just track if they're overtraining or undertraining to keep athletes healthy. And as was mentioned before, our first target was swimmers. And this is because of my original background in competitive swimming, where I kind of saw this problem firsthand, and then we eventually realized it's a much, much larger problem. So I was a club swimmer growing up, then I swam at the University of Waterloo, was team captain there my last couple of years while I was in engineering. So I really got to see this perspective from an athlete where we have a ton of data being tracked, but none of it really getting saved over time, and we kind of lose it right after the practice is over. And then I realized if this is a problem for me as an athlete, it's a problem times 20 for a coach of 20 athletes in the water. And that's where we saw this problem from a team perspective, and that's where things started getting kicked off. But the more we dove into this, the more we realized that this was a much larger industry-leading gap that was coming into play. The sports wearables market was massive and growing from $3.5 up to $15 billion per year, but there's a huge gap being formed in the market because there was a 30 to 70% abandonment rate of these devices, just because people weren't finding value from what they were being given because data alone was not good enough. So that's when we decided to go B2B first, so starting with teams and organizations before looking at the consumer side of things. So, first history, this is our horrible initial user interface, and this is what happens when I get to design things, so don't let me ever design things. This is our Excel circa 1997 look from 2014, and this is the GoPro case that we started off in. So we put a bunch of sensors into a GoPro case, strapped it onto an athlete's head, and we'd show a whole bunch of data to a coach to see if they thought it was interesting. Eventually, we upgraded to this, Windows 8 looking user interface, which was much, much nicer, questionable, and this really pretty device that an athlete would throw on the back of their head, and luckily didn't electrocute anybody. But really what we did is we took this device and we got to show coaches at major competitions in Ontario, like provincials, and we got to throw this on a bunch of kids, show them that they could get real-time data. And then sooner than we expected, we had coaches offering to buy these horrendous-looking GoPro cases. And we realized, okay, well, maybe we actually have something here. So we started to look at this a bit more seriously and start to build out our kind of first beta program. So that's what we see here, a bunch of our horrible-looking beta units that we built out. But the nice thing was we had a bunch of people offering us to buy our technology and work with us through this kind of these growing pains. We got to use that to raise some money and thankfully build a team out that could do these things a hell of a lot better than we could ourselves as two founders that were okay at a few things but not great at everything. So we had some awesome people that joined the team to help us take this vision to a reality. So that's really where we got to our first generation device. So that's what we're seeing here, the generation 1 of the Triton unit, which launched in early 2016. And this was a big milestone for us. And then from there, we had a big kind of transition to focusing on growth of the product and launching the product in different areas all around the world. So yeah, as I said, we launched early 2016, and we were launching to all levels of athletes, starting primarily with grassroots programming, club teams starting around 8 to 10 years old, into college teams, NCAA teams, and then eventually national federations where we'd actually deal with Olympic teams in the respective countries that we worked in, and then eventually grew that Generation 1 device to being in over 40 countries around the world. What we realized once we launched the product, we had to really transition our focus from being just a product, focused company to being a growth-focused company. And what we found in our industry was it was very different than many other industries, and we had to be extremely creative with distribution. We couldn't use the dollar for dollars model because you just couldn't get a hold of coaches or the people that we needed to talk to make purchasing decisions. So we had to become a fully inbound-driven organization and be creative about how we would get people to care about what we're talking about. One cool way that we did that, during the Rio 2016 Olympics, we actually would analyze every single final during the Olympics, and then we'd pump in all the different data that we could get from videos that were just taken in broadcast, and then we'd pump it into a UI that looked exactly like our customers would see it, and then publish it on a bunch of swimming media channels so people could actually see the data they cared about in these races, but through the kind of TritonWear user interface. So they'd get a lot of value from the data and kind of passively get exposed to our technology. So that was one way that we drove a lot of input to our inbound leads to our funnel. And then something that started developing over time was this concept of this kind of top-down federation strategy. So where we'd start working with Olympic teams around the world and start working with those top people to try to figure out, okay, how do we align with them because they talk to every single team and every single athlete within their organization, and how do we leverage that? So we started working with different countries around the world and realized that really what they're trying to do is get as many athletes as they can from grassroots programming at the bottom level all the way through the system until they reach the international stage and hopefully the Olympic podium. And then that started to really resonate, and that message started resonating well with people that we talked to. And now from there, we're now working with over 25 Olympic teams around the world heading into the Tokyo 2020 Olympics with this vision. So now more recently, that includes Swimming Canada, where we're the official training technology partner of Swimming Canada heading into the Olympics. Swimming France as well adopted us broad scope across the country, that I'll show you in a second as well, heading into the Paris 2024 Olympics, and Swimming Australia is another one where we're an official kind of strategy heading into the Tokyo Olympics. So a good example of this actually is with France. We started with one team, and this is a good example of kind of how distribution and unique distribution can be really powerful. We started with a single team in Paris, and that Paris got us in with a national team. That national team started talking to all the other teams in the country, and without spending a single marketing dollar, we went from one team to having our technology in all of these different cities around the country, just by word of mouth and by a really strong organic channel, by leveraging a really powerful member of that organization. So that was a really exciting thing that we're still trying to scale further down. So there's definitely a lot of lessons learned from that Generation 1 product. Number one, hire awesome people. As a founder, you're going to be mediocre at a lot of things, but there's amazing people out there, and if you can hire great people and talk to great people, they can help make your life a lot better. Another big thing that we found was we were really concerned about telling coaches what to do, telling athletes what to do, because really they're the experts in this space as well. And I would say, don't tell people what to do, don't tell them how to do their jobs, but don't be afraid of telling them, what is possible, because they don't really understand what you can do with data if you have a good understanding of the power that data can bring you. So don't be afraid to do that. And now people have gone the other direction where they come to us as the industry leader in data and analytics and sport, in swimming specifically, to give them that feedback on what they should do. And another thing that we talk about in the industry a lot is do unscalable things to sell, but from hardware development perspective, do not do unscalable things. That's a very painful lesson, and don't do that. Then the other big thing I would just say is that this concept of MVP versus MAP. So it's minimum viable product versus minimum awesome product. I would say we launched with a minimum viable product. I would highly recommend you push for a minimum awesome product. Somebody else told me this. I don't know who, so credit to them, but this is important to make sure that you make your customers happy and keep them happy moving forward. So now we're just moving on to our second generation product we're about to launch. That's just an exciting thing for us as it solves all of our pain points in our first gen that we've been doing for the last couple of years. Also allows us now to sell out to our B2C clients, so triathletes as well as general consumer level swimmers. But it's also future-proof for other sports, as the sports science behind this is the same across the board, which is really exciting for us moving forward as well. So for us, where we see the industry heading, is kind of one thing I want to close out with, is really all sports in this industry follow the same fundamentals of tracking training load, optimizing performance parameters, and utilizing biomechanical analysis. But really the way that we see this is data itself is not the answer. The answer and the winner in the industry is really going to be the person that can make the most insight and provide the most actionable guidance to the data that's being given to those users. So that's the next big critical thing. And I included a few closing points because I saw a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. Just be prepared for a long journey and make sure that you love the problem as you're going through it. Definitely just enjoy the journey is a big thing, and don't worry about the outcome. Focus on the impact, and ultimately success will come to you guys. So that's it for me, and thanks so much.
So if you have a question, just put up your hand. Nick is going to come around with the mic, and you can ask your question. Any questions? Your presentation was that good, it answered all questions.
All good.
You can hear it? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Can you explain what you mean by do unscalable things to sell?
Sure. So for example, when we started, ideally you have a bunch of people coming to you and you can just sell them product and the world's happy. Realistically, people don't know who the hell you are when you start, so you got to figure out how do you get to people and how do you sell product. So what we used to do is we used to send email blasts out to coaches in specific geographies and say, hey, we're going to be in the area, would you mind if we come by and demo for you? Like, we weren't going to be in the area, we just wanted to tell them that we're going to be there, and hopefully they'd take advantage of the opportunity, which is a low barrier to entry. And we get a ton of people saying, yeah, for sure, because we knew that if we showed them the product, we have a 50% conversion from demo to close. So we just need to get in the door, and we know we could close a deal. But it was really hard to get in front of people because our audience is just extremely busy. So there's just unscalable things you can do in the early days that will get you early clients that can help you build your brand and build your organic reach, and hopefully that helps you scale things a bit more cost effectively long term.
Looking at your map, I could see the success that you've had. It's gone across the world. What has driven that? Was there word of mouth? What initiatives did you do to achieve that?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're fully inbound driven. So one of the big things that worked well for us specifically was becoming really aligned and synonymous with sports science in the sport, and that's what we've done. We've partnered with the major swimming media channels out there, and we've built content that kind of explains this is the value of data. This is what this data means. This is what this data means. If you focus on this, you'll get faster. And we actually provide a ton of just high value content that kind of doesn't really relate to our product, but just relates to the industry in general. And then people think of TritonWear when they think of sports science and swimming, and then when they start thinking about implementing a solution like this, then they come to us. So that's been a really big thing for us, is about just providing that kind of information and brand awareness in the space, and then leveraging channels that get to the right people.
Yeah, because it truly proves the quality of your product and getting so many people coming.
Yeah, and if you have the right clients as well, that can put that level of of quality behind your brand, like the federations that we work with, it helps to kind of give you that credibility. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Tristan.